Good evening, everyone. This is Akshata Sangle from Harjai Global Gurukul. I'm the center head at HGG. Welcome to the HGG webinar on studying, working, and settling in the UK. HGG has been guiding and counseling students for over 15 years and has exponential following of students who are successful world over. With its excellent network and links with a wide range of educational institutes in India and around the world. HGG holds regular seminars, provides advisory services, and promotes joint ventures in new areas of education and growth. HGG is a regular participant at international education fairs, exhibitions, and information sharing through the media. At HGG, students are able to procure all services under one roof, right from the selection of the course to the visa counseling and transcultural adaptation. In January 2019, we have opened an office in US, Tampa, Florida, which puts us in a unique position to assist a student in every way. And our motto is, what is the best fit for the student? Before we go ahead, I want to inform everyone that we'll be having a 20 minutes question answer session at the end of this webinar. Kindly drop your questions in the chat section below. We'll be addressing to them. Also, we'll also be having a short quiz in the middle of this webinar, and all those who are able to give the correct answers will be given a voucher for one-on-one counseling session and study abroad session with Ms. Aarti Harjai. Today, we have a very interesting mix of panelists, and I would like to introduce our panelists today. Our first panelist is an industry expert, Ms. Aarti Harjai, founder and CEO of HGG. With over 15 years of experience in guiding students and professionals alike for their educational needs in India and abroad. She has done her master's in social work from Delhi University and business communication technology from Sunnyvale College, California. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Aarti Harjai to give us an overview on studying, working, and settling in the UK.
Thank you so much, Akshita. So, the first most important thing that comes to all students' mind is that why study in the UK? So, UK is home, as we all know, to not only the top 10, which is Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, but in the top 100 worldwide, there are a lot of universities that are located in the UK. Secondly, which is of extreme importance, is basically that your response to COVID, the UK has responded to COVID very, very well. It started out not too great, but now UK is almost at the position where 96% of the universities in UK are actually having face-to-face study sessions for this 2020 September intake. Now, if you come to the education system in UK, again, it is recognized and also very much revered worldwide. It not only allows you to have a great education and a great career anywhere around the globe, but it would even allow my students to apply for PR in countries like Australia and Canada. And I must share here, I know of a lot of Canadian students who come to UK to study. So the education system is very, very revered and very, very, as I said, accepted worldwide. Now the entry requirements are also very, simple, much more simple than what it is worldwide, especially in Canada and US. So basically, as long as you have your GPA, that is your percentage, and you have your IELTS result, which is the English language, International English Language Testing System, you are absolutely ready to go for the UK education. Now, another important point I would say is that UK education opens doors to global opportunities and global careers. Therefore, the return on investment is definitely there. As we are all aware, UK allows you to, after study, to get a post-study work visa and now even a permanent residentship. Definitely. If you could please change the slide. So how do you decide on your destination UK? there are always three things that I tell all my students, which are of utmost importance. One is your profile. That is that how well have you done in your education? What are the extra activities that you've done? What are your interests, etc. Second is your budget. Now, budget really plays an important part, because here I want to add that UK would cost you half of what other countries like US and Australia will cost you. So there are two reasons to it. One is that the undergrad course is only of 3 years, and the other is the master's course is only 1 year. Therefore, your budget, if your budget is not extremely high and you want a quality education, then UK is excellent. And of course, the long-term plan, as I said, that if you are looking at something that you want to do, wherein you want to also get a work visa and you want options for settlement, then UK is excellent. Now, how do you decide career paths? The important factors deciding the career paths, there are basically three. For all students and professionals alike, it is your interest and passion for the subject and your aptitude for the same, which is extremely important. So maybe you want to be a doctor, but if you don't have the aptitude for biological sciences, you can't really be a doctor. Third is market forces. One has to be very balanced when you decide, on what you want to do in the market that you want to do, because you must choose a subject that will allow you to have a good career. If you could please change the slide. Now, what does the UK university want to see in an application? As I earlier have touched upon this, we are looking at very, very basic things, like first our marks, then the exams, which is basically IELTS. UK, unlike Canada and US, doesn't ask for a SAT exam at all for undergrads, and for postgrad, no GRE required, but GMAT may be required from some of the top universities which give an executive kind of an MBA. They do require a GMAT. And of course, your essay and your recommendation, which are extremely important, and for which you can take the help of your counselors, your seniors, your alma mater, etc. And your profile, that is, you build towards what you want to be. Yes? Next slide, please. Now, when you decide as to, how will you decide the university that you want to go to in the UK, right? The most important thing I know for all Indian students is the rankings. Of course, there are many other factors like the location, whether you're getting the accommodation within the campus or not, or what is the ethos of the university, what are the clubs available. So you look at all that, definitely, but the rankings are also of great importance. So I would advise all students to use the complete university guide, the link for which I've shared on the screen. And this, you can check the rankings subject wise. So this is really important, as well as in job satisfaction wise. So it is completely up to you as to how you want to check the rankings. Then we have the research excellence framework, which I have to tell you is basically for masters in research or master programs and PhD programs. And then we have the quality assurance agency, which checks basically the teaching quality assessment of every university. This is usually done for undergrad courses. Now, let us come to accreditations. So when you choose a course, like I was looking at all the questions that were coming up on the side, and a lot of students want to know for particular courses. So here I actually have something for all of you, because for example, if you wanted to study architecture, make sure you choose a university whose course is accredited by RIBA, the Royal Institute of British Architects. Now, what will this do is that once you complete the course, you will be able to procure a job much more easily than otherwise. MBA, AMBA accreditation is extremely, prestigious. It is the association of MBAs. But then again, I have to tell you a word of caution. This is only for the executive MBAs, because for fresher MBAs, you don't have an AMBA accreditation. For accountancy, you have so many. We have the Associate of Chartered Accountants that give you all the different accreditations that you can see on the screen below. Now let's come to the other accreditation template. So for medicine, we know that the Joint Royal College of Physicians are the ones that give the MRCP accreditations. For psychology, we have the British Psychological Society. I recently had a student who wanted to study psychology. We found a lot of courses, then we dug in deep and we actually applied only for those that were accredited by the British Psychology Society. Then law, again, the Law Society is there. So the course could be accredited. For physiotherapy, we have Healthcare and Professionals Council, etc. So these are some very important factors that you should keep in mind while you choose a university. Now, applications in the UK. Now, how are the applications made in the UK? Basically, there are the undergrad applications, right? And the postgrad applications. The undergrad are all made through a common app, UCAS. The deadlines for which, the first deadline, for example, if you were to go in 2020 September, the first deadline was January 15th, 2020. Second is in March, and the final one is usually in June. But for all medical courses and other very specialized courses like veterinary, etc., the deadline is 1 year in advance. So the deadline for September 2020 was 15th October 2019. So you really need to plan in advance, especially for students who want to apply to top schools like Oxford and Cambridge. Their deadlines are 1 year in advance. Again, as you can see on screen, 15th October. Now for master's application, I have to tell you that it is very, very, there are no deadlines. It's very important that you still apply as early as you can, because it is usually on a first come first basis. And once the class is filled out, you will not have an option, and the applications will definitely close down. Yes, next please. Now the scholarships. UK has a tradition of giving out scholarships, government as well as non-government. So we have a lot of scholarships like the Chevening scholarships, Commonwealth, the Great scholarships by the British Council. We have the Charles Wallace India Trust scholarships and the individual university scholarships. So, you have the scholarships, which are the Rhode Island scholarships for Oxford. You have scholarships for Bristol. You have lot of different scholarships that all particular universities are giving out. And I have to tell you, every individual university will have academic scholarships, as in, if you cross, say, 75%, you might get a scholarship of £2,000. But if you get a percentage of 90, say in your 12th, you will get a £5,000 scholarship. So the scholarship is dependent on your marks. And there is surely, all universities run, Edinburgh runs scholarships. Then Scotland itself as a state runs scholarship. So there's lots which I can share with you individually once I know the course you're applying for and the university. Next, please. So this is very, very interesting. Requirements for UK study visa. A lot of students get very confused and scared. And I want to tell you here, UK is one of the simplest visas to apply for worldwide. The simplest study visa, simply with 3 documents you apply. Basically, it is your CAS, which you get from the university. It is the legal paper that allows you to apply for the visa. Your funds, that is your money basically, which is going to be only your 1 year fees and 9 months living cost. That's it. So you have to show your funds and your educational documents, which is basically your educational plus your IELTS. So as long as you have these 3, you can apply for the visa. And just to add here, where the funds are concerned, it is because it is so simple that you need the amount either in your savings or as a bank loan or as FDs only. Besides this, mutual funds and other forms of investments are not acceptable. Another big announcement. Now, Ministry of External Affairs, as you know, has opened up all the VFSs. The UK is, of course, the online is open, but even for the biometrics, they've started calling. And here in South Mumbai, the biometrics is open for visits, though the one in BKC is still closed. And the visa vignette is now valid for 3 months, which initially used to be valid for 1 month. So you needn't need to worry. Even if you apply now and go after 2 to 3 months, you're still sorted. Yes? Okay, let's go to the next now. So in UK, you have to, now that you've got your visa, you prepare to study and live in the UK. The British Council actually ran a course which was completely free of charge. It was a 4-week course, which is now coming to an end or might have already ended. And I'm sure students going this year must have attended that course. It was free of charge completely. And it would talk about how you can prepare as a student to study and live in the UK. So UK has had the highest, traffic of interest in the past 1 year. I have to tell you that there was a 42% increase in the number of student applications last year itself. 96% of the students who apply for a UK study visa actually get it. So here the interest is high because the UK has started not just a study work visa, but also the PR, which is the point-based system, similar to that of Australia. And you require 70 points, and it is completely skill-based. And they have actually announced it in February 2020. So another very important thing that you all need to know is that even though you start your course online from your home country, you will still be eligible for the post-study work. This is especially important for those going for 1-year master courses. As long as you can reach the UK by 6th April, your post-study work is not affected at all. So you could actually start your course from your home country in September and reach UK by 6th April and still get your work visa. So that I feel is completely amazing. Yes. So next, please. Yes, this is the quiz. Most popular drink among the British. Yes, somebody already answered tea. Great. Next. How many different languages are spoken in London? $300. Okay, next. We didn't have an answer for that. The famous game of golf was invented in? Yes, somebody said. Great. Next. The British passport is issued in the name of? Yes, we have 3 answers. Great. Queen. The name of the UK flag? Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, we just got from one. It's the Union Jack. Yes, or the Union flag, as we call it. Great. Okay, let's start. Now let's come to the interesting part, which I'm sure you all have been waiting for. That is the graduate immigration route. Now, this is what we popularly call the post-study work visa. So the graduate immigration route is going to be available to the international students who have completed a degree course, be it at undergraduate level or above that, and who have a valid Tier 4 visa at the time of applying for the 2-year work visa. And this is going to be launched in 21. So all the students going this year in 20 will be eligible for it. Another thing is that successful applicants on this route will be able to not only stay and work, but even look for work. So I get a lot of questions like, ma'am, how long will I get? I already saw it on the side. How long will I get to look for the work? How long? No, the entire time. You could be looking for a job as long as you want to. You have the rights to be in the UK as long as you have studied in the UK for 2 years at least. And beyond that, once you complete the 2-year work visa, what happens after that? Those who have found the skilled jobs and who qualify for skilled work visas will be able to switch their visas into Tier 2 in order to continue their careers in UK. And that's what will open their doors to their PR. That is of extreme importance. Yes, next please. So how is the immigration system in the UK coming about? So as I said, it is going to be launched in 2021. The changes will affect after the transition period between UK and EU ends in December 2020, because that's when all the EU residents will lose all their rights in the UK. So, and the UK has started this new immigration system because they wanted to take complete control of the long-term net immigration system in UK, as they are interested in getting highly skilled workers into the UK. Next, please. Could you change the slide? Yeah. So the point-based system. The government is launching the point-based system, as I earlier said, which takes different factors like skills and language into account. They do not take age and qualifications into account. Remember that. So the policy statement, which was released by Preeti, who on 19th February 2020, Preeti Patel, said couple of things. One, that as long as you have a job offer from an approved employer and you have it at an appropriate skill level, you can speak in English. Now let me take a pause here because I'm going to talk about the 70 points here for 2 minutes. If you have a job offer with an approved employer, it gives you 20 points. And if you have it at appropriate skill level, it gives you another 20 points. And if you can speak English at the level that they are asking for, it gives you 10 points. So you already have 50 points and you need 70 points for the PR. So how do you get the rest of the 20 points? Here, the third point that you can see on the screen, if you earn at least 25,600 pounds. So this is very, very interesting. And let me tell you another thing, that for the PhD and health workers, this threshold of 25,000, above 25,000 pounds, that is 25,600, has been brought down to 20,480 for PhD and health workers. Another very interesting thing that they have added to this point-based system is that they are saying that if you are in the short skill list, you can still earn only 20,480. So, and still get your extra 20 points to earn your total 70 points. So it is becoming very, very simple. I would say they've really made it as simple as possible. Now let's go into the next slide. That is the immigration policies. Now these are, as I said, I think I covered this point, that the government's aim is a system that provides flexibility for employers. So the minimum salary threshold is just over 20,000, as I just said, but this is only for the short skill list students and workers. And there's no need for the employer to prove that a job couldn't have been offered to somebody who was already a UK resident. This is a big change because as of now, the threshold is 30,000 pounds and the employer has to show that for 3 months or 6 months, they couldn't get anybody who was already living in the UK. Next, please. So for health and care visa, I must say, for healthcare professionals, which includes not only doctors, but nurses, physiotherapists, and others, they are going to have a fast track entry system. Those eligible will pay reduced fees, number one, and they're going to be supported for the applications completely. And they will actually have their decisions within 3 weeks, which is completely amazing. Now, successful applicants will be exempt from the immigration health surcharge. Now, students who are either applying this year or next year know that the health surcharge per year is 400 pounds. So the health workers are not going to pay that. And from this October, they are actually increasing the health surcharge to more than 600 pounds per year, per annum, which is really a huge amount. Next, please. It's about the STEM work. So this is just a short chart that you can see about how to get 70 points. So 20 for the job offer, 20 at appropriate skill level, 10 for speaking English. And supposing you have a salary because you haven't got it in the short skill list, So you need a salary above 25,000, but yours is 22. So you get 0 points. But then supposing you have a relevant PhD or you are in the STEM or a short skill list, you will earn 20 points. So you are equal to 70 points. I hope this chart clears up a lot of doubts. Next, please. So they are fast track route for health workers as well as for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics students. Half the students who travel to UK go for the STEM courses. The fast track route for scientists, they are going to remove the limit on PhD students moving into skilled work visa route, which right now they have a cap on it. And they collectively, this whole policy is to cement UK as a science superpower and a world leader in STEM. That is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Next, please. So this is very interesting. Why? Because a lot of people, because it's so new and they're still coming up with, they're going to make the rules clearer. The UK point-based system vis-a-vis the Australian point-based system. So for the UK, I can only say that there is only one way you can get in, and that is if you meet all the criteria completely. There's no other way to get in. So the UK point-based system is different for Australia because it does not take into account your age and qualification, as I said earlier. Whereas in Australia, age and qualification are of extreme importance. And the UK system actually puts the entire trust on the employer. So if the employer wants you, you're good to go. It's as simple as that. And the UK does not have the same sort of decentralized system as Australia, because Australia, all territories, they're different PR system. UK is going to be similar throughout. Next, please. So here, national dish of the UK. Quick. Yes. Which is the author? Which UK author is a billionaire? Lots of answers. Okay, yes, J.K. Rowling. Name the oldest higher education institute in the whole of UK. Super, lots of answers. Oxford, absolutely. Yes, how many museums does London have? Any guesses? Over 170, that's the answer. Next, please. Name the most expensive city to live in the UK. I'm sure all of you know the answer. Super. Yes, the answer is London. So we'll make a note and we'll make sure we will email you your vouchers today itself. Okay, can we continue? So the response of UK universities to COVID, well, as I've already said, they have been so supportive. I mean, all different universities have started with their, there are universities who've started hardship funds. There are universities which are, University of London is giving, has a news kind of data which is giving confirmed news to its students so that they do not get, by fake news, they don't get affected by fake news. Then University of Bath has brought in all their students into the campus. There are universities which are actually flying, for this September 2020 intake, they're sending in charter flights to take their students home, or, to UK, which is really amazing. University of Queen's Belfast is doing it. A couple of other universities are doing it. And the quarantine, they are saying, for 2020 will be completely free for the student. I mean, I would say 80% universities have already confirmed that. So for you, the most important thing to know is that in case you want the work visa in the UK, you will have to be, even if you start your course from home, you will have to be in the UK by 6th April. Please, all of you keep that in mind. Otherwise, you can't get the post-study work. Now, let me come to the last part, which is my advice to all of you. Education is the most important non-perishable asset that you can actually invest in, for which your return on investment has the highest probability. So please do not just go ahead with whatever your plans are, be it in India, abroad, wherever. most important, students who are commencing their course in September 2020 or those who are midway between their courses will graduate when all this is over and the economy is back at its feet. The world is back to normal. So you needn't worry. But I have to tell you, please keep all your options open. The situation is very fluid. Keep your options open back home if required. And if you're planning to take admission in India and you want to transfer next year, make sure you're choosing a university which is UGC recognized, that is University Grants Commission recognized, AICTE approved, and NAC accredited A, because only then will you be able to get a transfer to universities abroad, especially UK. So my advice to you is check your study destination. So for example, if you were to study in the UK, where the cases are very, very few and they brought the situation in control, I would say yes, happily go in September. But if you're going to some other destination, then maybe you want to do the first semester from your home country. And I would also say one more thing, that even though IELTS and all exams have been waived, please students remember, they have been waived for 21 as well, as of now. But remember, when the vaccine comes and the situation comes into control, all these exams will be back. So I guess all of you should be prepared for your exams. And the last most important thing I want to tell you is, please students, professionals, see how you can give back to society during this COVID times, because you will always look back at this time to see how you contributed to society. Thank you.
Thank you, Aarti ma'am, for sharing your expert advice.
Thank
Now,
you.
we are proud to introduce our second panelist, Mr. Divit Saini. He's a chemical engineering graduate from University of Edinburgh. He loves chemical processes, especially catalysis involving reaction engineering. Latest technologies leading to Industry 4.0 have always intrigued him. He is a football and a traveling enthusiast who is always up for a short hikes and treks. He is currently working at Whitman's Industries as a trainee graduate and has a confirmed offer to study his master's in advanced chemical engineering from Imperial College London in September 2021. I would like to invite Divit to share his experience of studying at the University of Edinburgh and how he procured admission in Imperial College London. Also, how he is planning his roadmap ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm David, and I'm here to share my experience at University of Edinburgh and to answer any other questions you have. Honestly, 4 years studying in Edinburgh has gone by really quick. I haven't really had the chance to reflect upon it until last month when I received my degree classification. If I were to sum it up, it was a place where I truly grew as a person. Academically, I would say I was pretty sound as my engineering fundamentals were strong after preparing for JEE entrance exams at base. Apart from the global exposure, studying abroad gave me the opportunity to explore myself by being independent and finding out my keen interest in this subject by engaging in various practical work such as industrial physics and lab work under professional academics. The 4 years in the university also gave me numerous opportunities to express myself in extracurricular activities, which really shaped up my personality. The best part was that every semester you could actually go and learn a new sport, any skill from scratch by just joining a relevant club in the university, so which was something which I look forward every year. Overall, the experience was amazing and rewarding for sure. It's kind of funny how back in 12th grade I had no plans on going abroad initially, but since getting into Indian engineering colleges can be very competitive, it was a safer option and a backup option to apply to UK, which was indeed suggested by Aarti Auntie. HGG took over from there, helped me throughout the admission process, be it editing the SOPs or obtaining the visa. So I'm really glad and thankful to the whole team for that. The whole team was really proactive to get things done even before time. Their guidance and profound expertise really led me to receive 4 offers through UCAS. And I chose Edinburgh as it ranked 4th in the UK for chemical engineering at the time. This decision is one of the best decisions I ever made. I can like surely say that. The next question is like, how did I actually procure admission in Imperial College? Um, well, there's not like just a particular exact answer to that, but there are like a few combination of things. So like, I think the first thing was the internship. So since my first year, I was really curious to know what chemical engineers really do as like a job role, like what they do after they graduate and what do they take up as a job in the industry. So I know that I was interested in chemistry and maths, but where will this all be applied or whether it will be or no was always like on my mind in the first year of uh, undergrad. So I had to work hard to build my profile to get myself a short 10-week internships for different roles in the chemical industry each year during this summer. So Edinburgh, so during a summer break was about 3 to 4 months. So I could easily fit in like 2.5 months for the internship. And by the end of 3 years, I had shadowed a process engineer, process design engineer, as well as the marketing head in a chemical distributing company. It was these internships, my leadership roles in the societies, that is my extracurricular activities, and as well as my first class grade in my third year that made a solid application for Imperial. Uh, this time, so the whole admission process was done by none other than HGG. This time, actually, I was in the UK and I had my exams going on, and I didn't really have much time on the application. But HGG's effective communication via mails, calls, then setting deadlines for me, and proofreading my personal statement was of really great help in securing a place at Imperial. And the final question was, I think, the roadmap ahead. Actually, like every time anyone asks me like this question, I just tend to introspect about like what I've done until now and what should be the next, like, obvious step. But I don't think I have like a solid answer to this. But at this point during my year out in this uncertain time, I am just trying to focus on advancing my skills and expanding my horizons by working as a trainee graduate and taking up professional courses before I begin my master's at Imperial in fall 21. Imperial again would be an excellent platform for me to network and search a dream job role that I really fancy. And now the post-study work visa for 2 years would really help me get that job. So that's what I am looking forward to. And we'll see like what the next 2 years have to give me. And now I just pass it back to Akshata. Thank you.
Thank you, Divit, for sharing your journey with us. And our third panelist today is very talented Alicia Moore. She is a part-time share market analyst, choreographer, and an avid reader of fiction. She is the author of Mine and several other short stories. She initially started writing on Wattpad, where she posted her very first story. In just a month, she had gained thousands of readers, which gave her the confidence to write more stories. Now she is the author of 5 novels and goes by the name of Alicia Maya Moore. Her work was published in special collections of Brunel Library, Brunel University, London. She helped Mrs. Manjeet Kaur Dhaliwal to publish her very first book, A Treasure of Memories, in London. I would like to invite Alicia to share her journey of studying and living at Brunel University, London, and how she is planning her roadmap ahead.
Hello everyone, I'm Alicia. So let me start by saying that being a writer wasn't really on my agenda. I was actually starting to become a chartered accountant, and I just sort of drifted away when my interest in reading increased. The very first time I wrote something was on an app called Wattpad. Even after 6 months, I barely had any readers. I was, of course, demotivated. So I kind of dropped it, but I didn't give up on reading. I carried on with it. My next attempt to write was when I had already read more than 1,000 books. Yes, I was that obsessed with reading, and I still am. And I guess it paid off, as in just a month, I had thousands of readers from all around the world. And that's where it all began. It gave me the much needed motivation to continue writing, and that's what I did. Now I have 5 more books under my name on that app. That also led me to publish my very first book in 2016 when I was only 17. It was around the time when I had just started doing BCom, and I knew I had to finish it before I could pursue my master's in writing. So after I finished my BCom, I was looking for a master's specifically in creative writing, but I really wasn't sure how to go about with it, as you don't often hear about such niche courses in India. But the one thing that I knew was I wanted to do it from the UK, because I'm sure you are all aware that the UK is home to great authors such as Thomas Hardy and Jane Austen and J.K. Rowling. It is also where literature has grown and evolved. So it made sense to do a course on writing from there. The difficult part was to select which university to go to, as there are many universities in the UK offering similar courses in writing. Like everyone, I was pretty nervous and clueless. To be honest, I visited almost all of the consultancy firms in Mumbai because it is so difficult to find a firm that shares the same enthusiasm as you or gives you a clear understanding of what is expected of you. And not to say that the other firms weren't good enough, but in the very first meeting with all of them, they had just gotten me more confused than I already was. But I remember my first time in Harjai Global Gurukul. The very first person I had met was Akshata ma'am, and she had been so approachable and kind. And then I met Aarti ma'am, and from there, they just kind of took over everything from me. Even before me saying what I wanted, or rather, what I was looking for, they already knew. And I guess that in itself speaks for them and the years of experience in this field. They made everything sound so easy, it felt as if a huge burden was lifted off of me. From helping me choose the best university and course to handling everything else for me, they made my life easier. Initially, I had planned for the January 2019 intake as I'd begin all my process in July 2018. So I was pretty sure I couldn't make it for the September 2018 intake. It was then Aarti ma'am insisted me to go with the September 2018 intake because a course like mine, which is such a niche course, it might not take place in January if a certain number of students don't turn up for the course. Whereas in September, there wasn't such a risk like that. And I'm so glad I chose to listen to her because later they made a couple of changes in the January intake course, which I wouldn't have liked. This all had happened by the end of July when I was yet to receive my offer letter. Forget about getting CAS. My course was starting in mid-September, so in less than 20 days, with the help of Harjai Global Gurukul, I had prepared all my documents, gave my interview, and received my offer letter. It couldn't have been possible without them because I knew they had much more work to do than me. My biggest concern that time was receiving my CAS because without it, I couldn't apply for my visa. And just a week was left till my induction ceremony. I remember panicking because I'd already paid a certain part of my fees and was yet to receive a response from them. It was then Aarti ma'am said, "We are here. We have opened a consultancy firm to help students like you. They're not just sitting here, Alicia. I'll talk to them if the CAS doesn't turn up soon." And just like that, all my worries melted away. When you have people like them who are there to be your support system, I don't think you could ask for anything more. And I actually received my CAS later that day. And then even in the visa procedure, they were proactive by helping me get ready for the interview and getting me prepared. And that's how my journey to Brunel happened. Of course, the beginnings are always difficult, and it wasn't any different for me. Trying to get adjusted into the new culture and environment was anyway quite stressful, but I had also missed the induction ceremony and hence the chance to create a first impression. But it turned out to be not a big deal, and I think that was the very first thing that I learned there, not to fret over the small stuff. things will always go differently than what you have planned, and it is completely fine to go with the flow. As far as I can say about my experience in Brunel, it has been amazing. And I'm not just saying that. From the faculty to the students and the most patient staff, everyone in Brunel will always be there to help you. They are very considerate of your situation and will give you leeway provided you have a valid reason. Having said that, of course, there are certain rules that cannot be compromised on, such as maintaining your grades and fulfilling all the visa requirements that happen quarterly. I had also gotten an offer letter from another university, but again, I'm so glad that HGG made me choose Brunel because the MA in Brunel was so diverse that it helped me learn all the important aspects of my course rather than focusing on just one, and hence opening different career choices for me. Also, Brunel has one of the coolest campuses that I've seen in London. For people staying on campus, you would have everything that you could ask for without needing to step out of the university. The most important thing that I can tell you is to always talk about your problems, because if you don't, they won't be solved. Whether it's academic related or related to your documentation or visa, there will be either your supervisor or the student and immigration center to solve your doubts. And if there is anything personal which you cannot talk to anyone, there will always be a counselor on campus to hear you out. Talking about London, it is quite a serene place. People there are really polite, if not helpful. The best thing that I liked about London was the commute. There are so many options for you to commute anywhere in and out of London. It is super easy to understand the commute system. The only thing you need to be careful about is going out during the weekends, because mostly all the repair and construction works that need to be done with the tubes or trains usually happens during the weekends. So many times, even if the maps show a particular station is working, it might actually not. And I speak this from my personal experience. I once got stranded and had to walk for 7 hours to reach my destination. But as I said, you learn as you go along. Everything in London is really pretty. The only drawback that I would say is the weather is quite unpredictable. One moment is absolutely sunny out there, and the very next it starts raining heavily. So always carry your rainwear with you. All in all, I saw myself growing and maturing in different ways, and I hope it's the same for you guys. Talking about my roadmap ahead, well, I can say I had planned to go back to London for my PhD, but then all this chaos happened. So I'm putting it on hold at the moment, but I'll most likely go by next September. I've already started working on my applications. Also, until then, I'm working as a freelance content and creative writer for businesses in reckoning and travel companies. I'm also working on my 7 series psychological thriller. So currently, I have too many plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia, for sharing your journey with us. Now we'll be commencing with a question answer session and we'll be answering to the frequently asked questions. I would like to invite Divit to answer a few questions from our participants. Divit, which was the important thing in your profile that helped you secure admission in Imperial College London?
Hmm. As I said earlier, like it's really hard for me to just point out one important thing in my profile, but I think it was the amalgamation of three things, I believe. So first thing was the summer internships in my field, which really showed an interest and eagerness to know more about the practical experience or real life projects to the Imperial College. And this made a strong selling point in the SOP. This second thing was the grades, of course. I mean, Imperial ranks 10th in the world, and especially UK universities considers grades to be a top selection criteria. And the other was the skills which I gained through extracurricular activities like leadership roles that I took in the societies in the undergrad program at Edinburgh, and also Edinburgh in chemical engineering also is accredited by an International Institute of Chemical Engineers, so which is like a world renowned accreditation. So that's also maybe like helped in the application. And far most of all, I was under Ardianti after all, and so it had to be successful, I believe.
Thank you. So how hard did you have to work for your excellent result at University of Edinburgh?
So in my first year, The exams were more or less based on the engineering fundamentals, which was covered in the JEE entrance exam. So that was repetitive for me. This gave me a lot of time to focus on sports and extracurriculars in my first year. So academic was not that much of an issue in the first year. From second year onwards, the core modules of chemical engineering came into picture with learning few mathematical computational softwares. The like this being new was really tough for me to like start with, but really doable if I like manage my time well. But in the last 3 years, I had to manage my time really well if I had to score well in the exam, as well as involve in extracurricular and apply for internships and jobs, because that was also one of the key, like you have to spend a lot of time building a CV, resume. So that's also like takes like a lot of time. The group assignments were quite hectic in the last 2 years, and there were at least one assignment every 2 weeks, so which was pretty hectic in the last 2 years, I would say. Again, like the degree transcript only has your grades in the last 2 years of undergrad. So those 2 years were really crucial for me to get like the overall degree classification. And overall, I believe for anyone who has studied in Indian education system until like 12th grade, it's much easier for them to score in exams than assignments in the UK. But then assignments also like you can crack if you manage your time well, and like, but you have to like put in extra efforts into that. Yeah, that's all.
So, Divit, how was living in Edinburgh away from home at the age of 17?
Actually, I was not even 18. I was just 17 when I went to Edinburgh. It was like my first time living abroad, and my parents came to drop me off to the student accommodation over the first weekend. I remember the time when they were like dropping me off, and I was really nervous and just overwhelmed on the first day, like what's going to happen, what's the next thing that I have to do, like procedure after coming there, get my BRP, this, that. So I was really like overwhelmed about it. The following week was the freshers week, and there were like so many social events happening on campus, and that you could engage in to make new friends and search your batchmates before the uni started. So this whole week was to make yourself comfortable with the whole place, with like your campuses and everything. So that really helped. So this week was something where I realized that it's not just me who is that nervous. So every international students who had come there were the same, and like we were on the same boat. So we befriended each other really well, and yeah, and then we just explored the city, Scottish Highlands, and a few other places in the UK in the first month. Edinburgh itself is very like small city with like a lot of heritage. The campus is at the main area of the city, and I could just walk to my classes, and everything I needed, as in like all the social events, my gym, or like different activities, which is like 15-minute walk away. I mean, I felt accomplished over the 4 years that I have lived abroad, like in terms of like being independent and managing to feed myself on time, because that was like a great achievement. Yes, and there was like definitely like a culture shock as well when I started, but you tend to find your type of people everywhere you go, I believe. And then, yeah, that's what happened. I found my type of people. We got into a flat for like 3 years straight, and I was with the same flatmates. I was really lucky to have found like a really good social circle out there. And I would just say, like, the students who are actually going to the UK, just have fun and be yourself. Everything will work out for you eventually, and all the best for it.
Thank you, David. Thank you. So we have next question for Aarti ma'am. Aarti ma'am, what are the best universities to study media related courses like journalism, event management, PR and advertising in the UK at master's level? And what are the fees and scholarships available?
Yeah, sure. So I would say London School of Economics tops it. with the fees of 22,608 pounds, so approximately 22 lakhs. And there is a graduate support scheme that you could apply for. And you're also looking at deadlines. Well, as I said, master applications, apply as soon as possible. And then you have Goldsmiths University again in London, which is excellent, and you do have bursary of 4 to 5,000 pounds, which are again Goldsmiths University scholarships. You have Cardiff University with a lower fees, that is 17,000 pounds. So it depends. So these are top universities, therefore the fees are also quite high. But all of these universities have scholarships ranging from 2 to 5,000. That is, these are normal scholarships. These are not the ones I was talking about, which are the government scholarships that you could also apply for. Yes, you can ask me the next question. Yes.
Ma'am, should I repeat the question?
Why you couldn't hear me? Hello?
Yeah, ma'am. So we have a next question here. What are the job prospects in the UK for marketing course?
Well, the job prospects at the moment not only are good for marketing. I would say they are going to be good for a lot of courses, for a lot of scope for a lot of areas like marketing, HR, finance. It is because of the exit from the EU. That's all I can say. So it's going to change. It hasn't changed. It's going to change. And this change is going to come from 2020 December, because that's when they are going to be losing all their rights in the UK. Yes.
So we have next question for Alicia. Alicia, did you do a part-time job while studying?
Is she unmute?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Alicia.
Yes, yes, I did work as a part-time creative writing tutor for a year and 2 months. I taught Miss Manjeet Kaur Dhaliwal the basics of creative writing and helped her publish her very first book. It actually came out this May. It's called A Treasure of Memories. She's 71 years old and it was difficult at times, but also so worth it. Like, despite having lived there for nearly 40 years, she was still far away from English as a person could be. So while helping her with the writing, I also helped her with the English, making her get used to technology and eventually with her novel.
Amazing.
So we have next question for Aarti ma'am again. Ma'am, what are the scope of PR after taking a business course?
Well, if you take a business course and if the business or management is not in the short skill list, but you manage a job which allows you pay of 25,600, I think it is 600, so 25,000 per annum, then you can still get your extra 20 points and apply for PR. So that's what it looks like as of now. Yes. Other questions? So I think what I'll do is I will start reading the questions in the chat box and start answering them myself. Will that be okay? So, ma'am, there are many universities in UK for psychology. Just a minute. In UK, for which shows that they are previously accredited. Should we go for these universities? They have to be accredited in the year that you're going, because many times courses can be accredited and then they lose their accreditation. So you are supposed to check that, supposing you were going in 2020, then is the course accredited in the year 2020? So it's very important for you to see that rather than whether it was. You have to see the present, because I know of a particular university where the course used to be accredited but now is not. You need to check that. Then I also have another question. I'm a student who joined in 2018 September, intake in a UK university, and right now I'm completing my second year. And will I get the benefit of a work visa when I finish my degree next year? Next year means 21 June. Yes, you will get the work visa. Okay, the options and costs of medical studies, especially neurology in the UK. Now, here I want to tell you, the medical field is a very, very vast that I could speak on. So there is on YouTube, we have uploaded one of my webinars on medicine. So I guess you should go through it. But just to give you a quick answer on this question, like one of my, you can go in for a course which does not require registration in PLAB or the Government Medical Council in UK. If you go for a course like that, then it is usually only 1 to 2 years. And the fees will not be very high. One of my students went for endocrinology in Queen Mary, Bart School of Medicine, and her fees was approximately 15 lakhs for that 1 year course. Yes. If I want to go for September 21 intake, then in which month should I go to UK? And can I do part-time job before my start of course? See, as the day you have a valid visa and you land in the UK and you get your stamping done of your Vignet, which is the BRPP stamping that you have to get done, and you get your national insurance number, that's when you can start working. So it's going to take you a couple of 2 to 3 weeks to do all this paperwork. And once you do it, you can start working. You know, whether your course is 3 weeks down the line or 2 weeks down the line, doesn't matter. You're allowed to work only 20 hours per week. Remember that. Yes. So I've scored 86% in 12th in PCM. Just a minute. Is UK good? I'm actually, before I can read the question, it just goes up. What are the job prospects in psychology with maths suitable for? Yes. If you have mathematics and you want to study psychology, it is excellent because all the top universities require mathematics for studying psychology. And it has excellent prospects, excellent. You know, psychology is used in the HR, in the corporate world, in the, you know, for counseling, for everything. So I would answer that. Then I've scored 86% in 12 and 90 in English. Can I get 100% scholarship? Well, that is a difficult one to answer, Saurabh, but with 86%, 100% scholarship is difficult. I don't want to, you know, discourage you, but that's how it is. Okay. What is the role of GPA in scholarship in UK? They have a very big role. So as I was saying, you know, the higher the percentage, the higher your chance of getting more of a scholarship. So maybe even up to 50%. Some of the universities give full scholarships. So as long as you have an excellent profile, you can go for it. Is UK a good choice for mechanical engineering, and which university will be a good choice? Now, mechanical, yes, it is a good choice because, as you know, you have the Rolls-Royce, you know, the manufacturing happens in the UK. You have the Jaguar manufacturing in the UK. You have a lot of very, very good industries for manufacturing in the UK. So it is a good choice, but the university would depend on your marks. So I could give you the absolute top, or I could give you a good university that is best fit for you according to your marks. So contact me separately and let me have your profile and I'll guide you accordingly. Cost of living in London is very, very high. It is more than £1,000 per month. Can you tell about integrated MSc and PhD course in Imperial or Warwick for student pursuing EXTC from Mumbai University? Expected grade point average 8.2 for data science, AI and ML with how much scholarship? Well, an 8-pointer is very good. It's excellent, but try to bring it up even higher if you're aiming at universities like Warwick and you're aiming at these top Imperial, of course. So you need to bring your grades up even higher, though they are excellent. And yes, you can apply, you have a good chance. You do, definitely. So see, what these integrated courses are is that after the 1-year MSc, you automatically get into the PhD program. It's actually the 1-year MSc they kind of help you make your research proposal. That's when you will start thinking of your research proposal and put that in. One of my students has recently got a fully funded PhD at Cranfield University for aerospace engineering, and this has been funded by Rolls-Royce at Cranfield University. So it's, and he's going, and he's already started his course, and he'll be traveling now this month. We had a webinar with him, and it is again on YouTube, which you can go through. I am Danesh Rafiq. I study, this is Danesh, in BA first SEM. I want to crack CSC of UPSC. I don't have to study for UPSC. For UPSC is, of course, the examination for the Indian Administrative Service in India. So, you could have a counseling session with me separately, and, we know that the UPSC exams are a completely different ball game altogether. So I could guide you, though I'm not a specialist for that, but I could guide you on how you can go about finding the right material. Okay. So, okay. What are the prospects of business management? I think I've already answered that. Sarah is asking this question. As I said, prospects, be it management, marketing, HR, or finance, they are going to be completely open and different and excellent for Indian students in the UK from the year 2021. I feel that this is an opportunity that we all need to grab, basically. Yes. I think as of now, the questions I can see on the chat box, I have answered. So I think we can, Akshata, you can take over.
Yeah, so that's a wrap on this webinar, and I would like to thank our panelists and attendees for joining us. We'll be answering to all the questions asked in the chat section on your mails. And also, please do not hesitate to contact us for any of your queries, either by mail or on the phone. We are taking one-on-one counseling session on Zoom, WhatsApp, and Skype, and our details are displayed on the screen for your convenience. Thank you and have a nice day.